One take. Let's bring in Brennan Bottcher to see what he thinks of all of this shenanigans.
And how old was he when Sandra Schmirler's shot was made? Hi, Brennan. Nice to see you.
How's it going?
It's going well. How old were you when Sandra's shot that roared so loudly for the curling community happened? Too young to know?
25 years ago?
25, yeah.
So I was probably 5 or 6.
Okay. Had you started curling then?
No, I didn't start till I was 10.
Okay, awesome. Such a moment.
Just some thoughts on that shot, Brendan, and then we'll get down to business. But it had to be perfect, as we saw with Colleen and I try to recreate that.
Yeah, I'm smiling just watching it. It's gonna always be one of those iconic shots. I think all of us that are involved in the sport watch that again, and it just can't help but smiling at the end of it. It's just pretty cool all around, and just her reaction to it just spoke so loudly. And yeah, it was just awesome. I think, Devin, you just needed to be a little more invested in some of those line calls. And
really. Thank you, Brennan. Thank you.
Right, like you bringing the same level of passion to the line calls.
I thought he missed it too, Brennan.
There's always someone to blame, right, Colleen?
Yeah, there is always. But when I watch that shot, I know I've mentioned this before, but sometimes to win, it just requires a little magic too. And that turning point to capitalize, to throw it well under such pressure, to go to the first Olympics. Like, what's been that moment for you so far in your very young career?
Yeah, there's always, those big shots. I look back to the one actually I made at the very end of that semifinal down in the Brier bubble to beat Matt Dunstone. It really wasn't our best game. Things weren't really going our way. And you have a shot to win kind of out of left field. You make it, you end up, in our case, in your 4th Brier final in a row. and that's all of a sudden the game you play lights out, and you end up with the maple leaf on your back, and, all those good, happy emotions that are associated with that. But no, it's awesome. I think in all of our careers, there's a handful of shots that you can look back and they're just so pivotal. Right shot, right moment. No margin for error. And it's awesome.
That just gave me goosebumps too. Listen, we've been dying to talk to you because we're so excited about your team, and tell us about the growing pains and the good and bad and the ugly of it so far. Mostly good, I know, but summarize.
Yeah. So, I'd say it's been outstanding, year to date. I couldn't ask to be out there with 3 better guys on the ice, 4 better guys, including Paul. I think you put together a new team, especially us, coming from 4 separate teams. We're trying to build something that's a little bit bigger than each of us individually. And that takes a little bit of time. So, I think the expectation from some that, at this point in the season, we'd be, a whole pile of wins and 0 losses, probably wasn't very realistic. So I'm actually quite happy with where we are. Even in the last couple of weeks, I've been so happy with some of the practices we've had. I think we're going to have a great week next week out in Oakville. And, I think we're going to have a great, championship run, hopefully into the Brier again this year.
You've had 6 events so far. You talked about practice. You have Paul Webster coaching you, who I think is a brilliant mind in the game of curling. Benny and I had a conversation, Brennan, and he said, you're doing things and you're tweaking things in practice, and it might not be perfect right now, but it's a long road to 2026. So tell me about that journey and what it's like to do some tweaking and figuring out, which may not, you may not have immediate success, but it's a long game, as you know.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it goes back to a lot of the reasons why we formed this team, in some ways. We looked at the landscape here in Canada, and I think, we're not on par with a lot of those international teams. We're behind a lot of those international teams. So, the only way we're going to make some steps forward is to try and, do things a little differently. It would have been pretty easy, especially picking up those guys, to go out there and just try and make as many shots as we could out of the gate, doing it the way we had done it in the past. That would have been really easy. I think we would have had a whole pile of instant success. I'm not sure we would have moved the needle enough, to beat Nick and to beat Bruce and to beat those teams consistently. So, we brought on Paul, who's, keeping us accountable, facilitating some awesome conversations, is also super knowledgeable about curling, by the way. And, we're taking steps. We're trying to grow. We're testing new things. We're pushing each other a little bit. We're doing things differently. And that's been awesome. So I've actually really enjoyed the process, and I care a little bit less about, the wins and losses along the way. I'm hoping in 4 years this formula we've put together can end up being quite successful.
Nice. I love your honesty there too, where so often we don't want to admit that we've fallen behind a little bit, that everything's just fine. How, for a team that's been so successful individually, and the list of accolades for all of you is so long, how do you drop those egos and say, maybe we need to relearn a few things?
Well, I think the only guy on our team that was probably on the best team coming into it was Brett, in all honesty. So I think for all of us, it was a little easier. But I think all of us, coming together, I think we just all work hard. I think we're all driven. I think we're all motivated. I think we're all held accountable. I'm just, proud of all of that. And otherwise, you don't have to play those international teams very many times to realize that, they're pretty good. And in a lot of cases, they're a little better. So you got to work hard and you got to keep pushing. And that's something we're going to continue to do.
You guys have put together a brilliant documentary. I think there are more to come. I watched it. It's outstanding. The thing that caught my attention is what Ben Hebert said about parallels to you. Let's take a listen and let's get your reaction to that. Because I found
stuff from last year, just total hogwash. He's such a great guy, total beauty. I would say actually, and people probably wouldn't think this, but I think I'm probably most like Brendan of our team. Our beliefs and the things we say, and even sarcastic. I'm a lot more vocal of it than Brendan is, but I think behind the scenes, if you get to know Brendan and the guy he is, he's hilarious. Great sense of humor, and obviously the one thing he's going to laugh at when I say we're most similar, he's going to say, no, I'm way smarter than Ben, but he is. He's an engineer. He's a super nerd, but super fun guy to be around. Love to play golf with him this summer, have a few beers, and yeah, he's been a total treat, and so far on the ice he's been great. Great to play with. He's a confident skip, and he calls you out on your bullshit. If he sees something, he's going to tell you, if right or wrong, which has been great and refreshing. And he's a great communicator, and he works really, really hard.
Didn't see that you two were alike and aligned. That's interesting.
After we published that documentary, my mom called me, and that was the one thing she picked out of it too. She needed to get my thoughts on that quote, and I actually think it's pretty honest. So I think there's two things there. I think, Benny isn't necessarily the guy that you always see on TV either. And I think there's a lot more to him than, maybe the world has chalked it up as, And I do think we think about things quite similarly. He might say things a little bit different than I would say them, but I think if we drill down, to the root of what it is we're trying to say, more often than not, we're probably on the same page.
And is the nerd part a compliment, by the way? I would think it is,
I've been called a lot worse than that, Colleen.
Listen, are you missing mixed doubles with Bobby?
I am. It was so cool what we were able to do together. I think that was the special part. I just looked in the mirror, between our family, between my work, between this new men's team I'm putting together. How much energy do I actually have to split so many ways, right? And it's tough too, I think, in curling. Sometimes when you have an off weekend, you just need to be at home resting. Yeah. And if every off weekend you're playing another discipline of curling, are you really practicing as much as you need? Are you resting?
Yeah. No, that's a fascinating thought. It seems to me like you guys are having fun, like you're enjoying this process, and I know, and I have felt that maybe that grind of the bubble, and the weight of carrying the maple leaf and the Briers and all of that can knock you around. It feels like there's you've got the new team, but it feels like there's some rejuvenation.
Good word.
Absolutely. I think anytime you start something new, it's pretty easy to go through a honeymoon phase, but I can only speak for myself. I'm having a blast. I'm really enjoying it. I think we all came from teams that were established for a long time too. It wasn't like any of us were coming from a team that was thrown together 2 years prior. Most of us were coming from, 1, 2, 3 year quad or 3 quad cycles, so a large chunk of time with the same group of guys. And now we're together, and gives you an opportunity to reinvent yourself a little bit, gives you an opportunity to learn a whole bunch from guys that you've been bashing your head against the wall against forever. And it's just been refreshing. I've really enjoyed it.
Awesome.
Well, it's nice to talk to you, because I think for especially junior curlers, any curler listening to this, to know that you can be as great as what you guys are and still have to find ways to get better and work at it the way you are is a really good lesson. That's our lesson of the day.
Before we let him go, can we get your reaction? Did you see this video of the cracked rock, Brendan? And I don't know if you've seen this, but this was going viral earlier this week. Team White posted this. They tweeted it out, said it was supposed to be a draw, and this is what happened. Have you ever seen that?
Well, no, I haven't. I have probably thrown a few of those draws that have hit the boards hard enough that.
Funny.
Yeah.
It sounds like the team is rock solid, and we will see you here in Oakville next weekend. I'll pop by and say hi to you guys. So thanks for making time, Brendan.
Awesome. Thanks. I appreciate you having me on.